Hey peeps, I'm Jonathan Goodman, licensed mental health counselor, registered yoga teacher, and I will be your Whispering Rock for today. I'm going to start by saying I'm sorry. I have wanted to put this video up particularly for a long time, along with, continuing to work on some projects that I'll talk about near the end of the video for those that are interested. And it's just been a long 3 months for me. I feel comfortable saying, because some of my clients know already, um, but I have been having some car issues. Rather, I am dealing with the issue of knowing that I need another car. And so I am working through the stress of that and the kind of just emotional attachment I have to a car that saw me to grad school and to the start of my counseling career and everything. So that's my main reason for the delay here. There's been some other things too. I'm currently working something else into my self care practice that I will talk about in the near future. Stay tuned again for the end where I talk about my plan if you're interested there. I want to try to keep this short because there might be some people who really like my yapping, but I try to minimize it just so if you are here for meditation, you get it as soon as possible. My meditation that I'm going to practice today is the mindfulness of breathing. So the first video I ever posted on this professional page was my favorite mindfulness meditation, the loving kindness meditation. I may re-record that at some point. I may not. I might just leave it up and let it be imperfect. But for the last thing that I'm going to post this year, 2025, I wanted to do the mindfulness of breath meditation. And the reason I wanted to make sure I get this in the first year that I do YouTube is because it's the first meditation that I typically teach. It's one of the first meditations I was ever taught myself, and it's considered to be one of the simpler meditations. So if you are looking for something that's going to help teach mindfulness and just give you a practice of mindfulness, but it's something that's pretty quick and pretty simple, this is the one for you. This meditation is adapted from Thich Nhat Hanh's The Miracle of Mindfulness. However, you will find this meditation in a lot of places. If it's not this, it's probably the body scan that's like most common. When you like search mindfulness meditation on YouTube, you're bound to find the mindfulness. You're bound to find the mindfulness of breath or the body scan. So it's a very common version of mindfulness meditations. And it's simple. When we're paying attention to our breath, we're just here. We're just paying attention to our breath. And like if you have a totem or something like that, like let's say you have like a rock or something that you hold, like that's great. But what if you have left the rock at home and you need to practice some mindfulness meditation on the go? Well, you always have your breath. If you're not breathing, there's an emergency situation that needs to be dealt with. Don't worry about practicing mindfulness. But every time you could practice mindfulness out in the world, you're breathing. So you always have your breath with you. So using that as an object of meditation is where we're going to practice today. This is also for those people who paid attention to my blog or have heard me talk about my mindfulness course that I did in May of this year. This is one of the first things they taught us too. And I felt real smart because I had known it for many years. Didn't stop me from feeling stupid in other times in that course, but this one I felt good because I was like, I know the mindfulness of breath. So there's one caveat I will give about this meditation, and then I'll stop yapping and get to practicing. The one caveat is this meditation, all it requires is for you to just pay attention to your breath. You don't have to change anything. You don't have to modify anything. You just pay attention to your breath. However, there will be a point kind of near the end of the meditation where I'm going to ask you to change your breathing at all, or change your breathing a little bit. If that makes you lightheaded, if it's uncomfortable, if there's anything that feels off about that, stop. Being able to meditate through uncomfort, discomfort, whatever word you want to use with it. I like my made up word right now. If you want to meditate through something that does not feel comfortable, okay, that's fine. But you don't have to. If it feels uncomfortable and this doesn't feel right to you, it's just something in your body doesn't like breathing deeper for whatever reason at this moment, go find one of my other meditations to do, or go find someone else who's doing the mindfulness of breath and they don't ask you to change your breathing. Do it in a way that is comfortable for you, because you shouldn't have to suffer just through your meditation practice. That's my only caveat, and I'll mention that a little bit in the meditation. If, you won't hear this if you're one of the people who skip this part, but if you skip this part, I will kind of give a caveat there. And now, without further ado, let's get into the practice. You can bring yourself to a comfortable seated position, or you can lay down. And when you're ready, just begin paying attention to your breath. I will, as I normally do, ring my singing bowl to get us started, and I'll ring it as we end as well. As best you can, bring your attention to your breath, allowing your breath to fill your entire attention. Perhaps you can feel the air come in through your nose or out through your mouth. Perhaps it feels more comfortable to breathe a different way, and you can breathe that different way. So you can feel your chest rise and fall, or your stomach expand and contract. Let that be. And through most of this meditation, I'm going to ask you to just pay attention to your breathing without changing it, without having to modify it, just noticing. So without trying too hard, without trying to make your breath right, just notice. Do you feel air moving around your nose and mouth? Feel your chest and stomach like I talked about before. Feel air moving up and down your throat. However you're experiencing this breath at this moment, just do that. And when you're ready, and if you're comfortable, I would encourage you to pay attention to your in-breath. And of course, you'll have to breathe out to breathe in. That's part of the agreement that our body makes. And as much as possible, just see if you can pay attention to that in-breath and what it feels like as you're breathing in. Particularly, see if you can get an average as you breathe in for a few breaths about how long your typical in-breath is. We're going to use these numbers later on in the meditation, so just noticing. It does not have to be exact. You can use a count in your head. You can use a clock that's ticking. Whatever you'd like to use. So again, just getting a rough average for what your typical in-breath is. Seeing how long it is, and what you might feel from your typical in-breath. Feel like you've gotten those numbers. Switching, and this time paying attention to your out-breath. And again, to breathe out, we need to breathe in. So of course you'll do that. But as much as possible, just pay attention to the out-breath. Be able to notice a few things here. Once again, the important number, quote unquote, is how long is your typical in-breath, or rather, how long is your typical out? Doesn't have to be exact, but just noticing how long is your average out breath. Perhaps since we got our number for the in breath as well, noticing if your out breath is longer, shorter, or maybe exactly the same as your out breath or your in breath. Getting those confused a lot today. And just noticing. There's no right or wrong way for your breath to be at this moment. It's just another thing for you to be curious about. In Thich Nhat Hanh's practice, he says that typically we want to work towards equaling the in and out breath. But here and now in this practice, you can just notice if it's longer, shorter, or exactly the same. And when you feel like you have an average for that out breath, this is where I'm going to encourage you to breathe just a little bit deeper. If this makes you feel lightheaded or uncomfortable at all, feel free to stop. And if you feel like it's okay and you feel like you can do it, feel free to follow along. To create this deeper in breath, or this deeper breath, we're going to focus on the out breath where we just left off. So taking your average out breath, we're going to extend it by a few counts. So I'll give you an example of what that might look like. If your out breath was super shallow, let's say, like a count of 2 or 3, maybe trying to push that out breath to a 4 or a 5, as long as it still feels comfortable and as long as you don't get lightheaded. See if you can do that. If you had a bit of a longer out breath, let's say your out breath was a count of 6 or 7, maybe to an 8 or a 9, maybe 10, as long, again, as it still feels more or less comfortable to breathe this little extra bit. And notice any differences you feel with this longer out breath and this longer breath as a whole. I know when I practice, I can feel my diaphragm constrict my lungs just a little bit more. As a yoga teacher, I notice these things now. I can feel my lungs empty out and kind of like this very light burning sensation. From that, though, I notice that some of that breath is automatic. It doesn't need to be me trying to breathe in. Just feel air naturally fill my lungs as they start to fill again. And once again, there's no right or wrong thing for you to notice here. For differences you notice with this deeper breath, just notice them. If there are no differences with this deeper breath, if this feels exactly the same and you don't feel any change, notice that too. Because that in and of itself is also mindfulness. And for the next couple breaths, feel free to breathe however is most comfortable for you. If just going back to breathing passively and not trying to change anything feels better, then go ahead and do that. If you like this deeper breath, if this feels more comfortable for you, if you're starting to feel more relaxed, you can stick with this. Whichever feels more comfortable, just notice your breathing for a couple more breaths. And notice any changes that you have now that you didn't have before. Or maybe there is no changes. Again, maybe everything feels exactly the same after this breathing practice. Once again, there's no right and wrong thing to feel. Typically, people will become more relaxed as they do this meditation. But just because we're meditating doesn't mean we automatically become relaxed. Sometimes we need to just pay attention to whatever anxiety, sadness, fear, whatever that we have in our body. As we start to conclude this practice, take a few moments to just reflect on what it's been like for you, anything you might have noticed that was noteworthy. If you had your eyes closed, you can feel free to open them and bring your attention back to the room. That, my friends, is the mindfulness of breath. One of the reasons I practice the mindfulness of breath is because as I said before, you never lose your breath. Like, you might be scared and holding your breath. You might be scared and hyperventilating. You might be sad. But you always have your breath with you. Again, if there's not breath somewhere, there's an emergency that needs to be solved, and mindfulness needs to take a back seat while we deal with the emergency. So it's a practice that can just be anywhere. There is a Buddhist monk, Mayunga Rinpoche, who has a much simpler version of this meditation that he calls the monkey mind meditation, that I will link below because I like to mention at least my sources. And he says, even if you're meditating for 1 breath or 2 breaths, that's still meditation. So give yourself some spaces where you can practice some meditation whenever you can. And if you need YouTube videos like this one to practice meditation, that's great too. As a coming soon for the channel, I will once again say I am working on the Spec Ops The Line video. I'm now actually actively editing it versus finishing my playthrough cut together and yada yada yada. I'm actually editing it, so I have an idea for what I want it to be. I am also going to make a second video from Spec Ops The Line about a differential diagnosis. I was struck by this game so strongly when I finished it that I was like, okay, yeah, this is going to be about PTSD, but I also want it to be about something else, but I don't know what. And so I came to the office, I ran and grabbed my DSM-5, and I flipped to the differential diagnosis section for PTSD, and I saw a couple diagnoses I thought could qualify here. There's one in particular I'm going to do a second video on Spec Ops The Line with. I will save that as kind of a teaser for when that video gets posted, hopefully sometime in January. I am also going to shelve for now Last of Us Part 1. I do want to do a video on that. It just won't be one of the videos that I'm going to try to finish in early 2026. Because I want to do a video on video game addiction. It has been something that I have come to terms with in my life multiple times, but this moment in my life is a time where I am coming to terms with it the most. Video game addiction is not an official diagnosis. Hearing people tell it was under consideration for DSM-5, but it did not make the cut, and they are going to reassess it at some point. But for me, it absolutely is a diagnosis, and it's a diagnosis that I hold. And I've been doing some work for those people who listened to my rambling at the beginning of the video. That's some of the work that I've been doing. I've been working to come to grips with video game addiction, what it means for me, and how I need to treat it for myself. And I want to talk about it. I want to talk about some of the work I've been doing, some of the stuff that I discovered over the past year of my life. And to do that, I'm going to cover a particular video game called SnowRunner. If you know, you know, and maybe you've laughed along with me and they're like, how is SnowRunner gonna symbolize addiction? Well, this is gonna be the first time, not the last time, but the first time when I cover something on DSMMA that I'm not doing a video on how this represents a diagnosis in someone else or someone featured in the game. I am going to do a video about how it represents that diagnosis for me. And SnowRunner is an incredible video game that I love deeply, and it was an incredibly dangerous video game for me to discover in late 2024 and early 2025. So I'm going to talk about it. That's going to be my first non DSM-MA video that I'm going to, I guess that is a DSM-MA video. It's going to be my first video after Spec Ops The Line when I finish that sequence of 2 videos. So stay tuned for that sometime, I think hopefully early in 2026. I say hopefully because, early 2026 can vary, but I hope to have it out by April at least. And somewhere in there, you'll see me post other meditation videos. I got a Christmas gift this year from someone who's very important in my life that's going to make it so that I'll have even more meditations to talk about. I've got like a bookshelf full of things where I can pull meditations out of, but I've got some Thich Nhat Hanh meditation cards that I'll use to kind of like help myself do some of these meditations as well. And I will probably sometime soon actually follow through on my promise since April of this year to post my first full-length yoga class that is a version of my final that I gave in April or March. I gave that damn thing in March of 2025. So hopefully sometime before March 2026, you'll get a version of that. Again, apologies for promises not kept and videos not made. I am going to put up a video about that final because I want to celebrate the fact I did it, and I want to offer what is my first gift of mindfulness and meditation and yoga as to how it can help trauma. With that said, I hope you all are ending 2025 as stable as you possibly can be. I know this is not a year that has left a lot of people very stable, myself included, but I hope it's leaving you as stable as possible. I hope you have a fantastic 2026. I know I will be doing a lot of video editing in 2026. And please, as always, stay safe and proceed mindfully.